So Simon, in the book you talk about the second phase of brain-friendly selling, and you talk about maximising comfort, which I think some salespeople wouldn't have heard of before. So what do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is uncomfortable brains don't buy. Salespeople know this instinctively, which is why salespeople will of old will do some sort of rapport building conversation. Maybe look for something in the customer's office, like a golf trophy, and ask a question, which is really embarrassing if the customer is in someone else's office. So I wouldn't do any of that. We've got to make them comfortable, because the brain, when the brain meets, the brain inside the customer's head meets a new salesperson or a stranger for the first time, the more primitive region is in a minor form of threat response. It's that uncomfortable feeling before you get to know somebody, and it's that more primitive part of the brain. So we've got to get that bit of the brain to feel comfortable and to calm down, which makes the rest of the brain receptive to our sales process and methodology. And so the first thing is this kind of connect thing, so is meeting them, and this is just good old-fashioned first impression management. How you look, a firm handshake, not too much pressure, open body language, so you're appearing non-threatening, torso, smiling, is like incredibly simple but amazing. Sometimes when I'm out with salespeople, they look like they're incredibly miserable. Smiling makes you look non-threatening to the customer's brain. And then also, don't burst their bubble, proxemics. Don't get too up close with them. Be respectful of that kind of distance. So that, the old adage, you can't, never get a second chance to make a first impression. So make that impression, then do the reading of the person and looking at their personality style, as we discussed in another video. So you can then chameleon. You start to adapt towards what you're seeing. So you observe them, you identify it, and then you start to adapt. And then that's usually starting the meeting off very good. And then the third part is about giving the customer's brain a strong sense of control. So sometimes people have salespeople coming to see them. They'll feel a bit negative. They don't want to be pitched at. They don't want to be sold at. So I would usually say something like, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, this is the first time we've met. So the process ideally I'd like to follow, if it's okay with you, is I'd really like to understand a bit more about your business or your organization, and understand, have a look at that and maybe some of the challenges you're facing that we spoke about it on email. And then if a little later on, if I think we can help you, what I'd like to do is maybe have a conversation about perhaps how we might be able to work together, or not. And I'll sometimes use the or not phrase, because that takes all the pressure away from the customer, and they know they're in control of the meeting. And because they have control, they feel they have a sense of control. In fact, the salesperson is often guiding the meeting, but the customer feels comfortable. The brain relaxes, the brain is therefore far more receptive, and you can ask, for example, more probing questions of someone if they're feeling more comfortable with you.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of salespeople miss, and it's something that I've always spoken about, and it was interesting in the book, this idea of control. And making sure that the customer feels in control, because you're not going to get very open responses, are you, to questions if they don't feel in control of the situation.
And they are in control at the end of the day, because they're going to make the decision to buy or not. And sometimes salespeople are quite shocked when I suggest, they say, my understanding of the purpose of today is for you to decide if you want to carry on talking to us or not. And when you say that to a customer, you'll often see the customer, they'll sit up and they'll go, oh, that's unusual. Because although that is what is going to happen, normally a salesperson doesn't verbalize that fact. When you do, and you say you're going to have the choice, the customer will then relax. You're only saying what's reality anyway.